superstar Caitlin Clark. She is in the Women's National Basketball Association. Big star, huge star, brilliant player.
She plays for the Indiana team, and it's important to recognize that nearly 64% of the WNBA is made up of black athletes. Into this environment, Caitlin Clark arrives and almost instantly becomes the league's biggest star. From her on-court presence to her impact on merchandising and every other commercial aspect, her influence is undeniable. However, it seems that this sudden rise to fame has sparked a level of jealousy among some, and that frustration may now be showing itself through physical play and, at times, behavior that can only be described as inappropriate. Here's Stephen A. Smith on it. Go.
You got people that are resentful towards her, but it's really not about her, guys. It's about what she represents. Before she ever came along, there were a lot of outstanding basketball players who happened to be black females that was doing their thing on the WNBA level. And they never got this kind of shine. This girl, the Golden Goose, comes along and
And why is all this happening? Quite simply, it's because she's brilliant at what she does. Her exceptional talent is the very reason she's creating such a stir and dominating the court. She's just that good. Now, when someone of her caliber makes such an immediate impact, it naturally attracts attention far beyond the league itself. Even LeBron James, who is often considered by many as perhaps the greatest basketball player of all time, has been keeping an eye on how this situation is unfolding.
And we have grown-ass men and women out here doing whatever they can to try to make sure that does not happen. That is the weirdest thing in the world, but it is what it is, and I'm glad that Caitlin has a great head on her shoulders.
He is the founder of Origin Advocacy, and recently he wrote a detailed piece in the Wall Street Journal on this very issue, which immediately drew my attention. So, the natural first question is, what exactly is Origin Advocacy? Well, Origin Advocacy is a Washington, D.C. based consulting and lobbying firm. Their primary role is to guide clients in understanding how to effectively engage with the federal government and navigate the complexities of policymaking. In simpler terms, he essentially serves as a consultant to a variety of individuals and organizations. But is there an ideology connected to this work? As he explains, after working in government for nearly 15 years, his perspective is rooted in the principles of limited government. He identifies as a conservative and has an extensive background serving under prominent figures such as Marsha Blackburn, Ted Cruz, and within the Trump administration, including time at the Trump White House. With that background in mind, the next question is, what specifically about Caitlin Clark drew his focus? According to him, Clark has made a seismic impact on the WNBA from the very moment she entered the league. The statistics speak for themselves. Merchandise sales skyrocketed by more than 600%, league app engagement surged by over 600%, subscriptions increased by more than 400%, and her team, the Indiana Fever, even managed to triple its overall value. But despite all of this early and undeniable success, the league has, in many ways, chosen to look the other direction while Caitlin Clark has been repeatedly targeted on a weekly basis. This pattern of behavior is not only unfair but also places her long-term career at serious risk. So, what does targeting actually mean in this context? Essentially, Clark is taking harder fouls, and at a much higher frequency, than any of her peers. In fact, during her rookie season alone, she absorbed nearly 17% of all the league's flagrant or hard fouls, which is more than double the rate experienced by any other player. That kind of disproportionate treatment is something you would never expect to see happen to a top star in any other professional sports league. Naturally, fans are left scratching their heads, wondering why the WNBA continues to allow this to happen, especially when Clark's presence has generated the exact kind of economic boom the league has been chasing for decades. But Sean, you're clearly not scratching your head about this. What do you think is going on here? According to him, the signs were already visible right after Clark was drafted and heading into her rookie season. A'ja Wilson, a three-time MVP and championship winner with the Las Vegas Aces, publicly addressed the attention Clark was receiving. Wilson didn't mince words, she stated that it absolutely had to do with race. In her own words, "It boils my blood when people try and say that it's not about race." Unfortunately, comments like these, made on camera by high-profile players who are fully aware that reporters are listening, strongly suggest that there is indeed a racial element influencing how Clark is being treated. So, is the implication here that some black players simply do not want to see a white superstar rise to prominence in the WNBA? Is that what you're saying? I think, as you pointed out earlier and as some of the clips leading into this segment have shown, a lot of what we're seeing comes down to jealousy and animosity. And in some ways, that's understandable. If you've been an MVP in the league, if you've won championships, yet you still didn't receive the kind of visibility, attention, and endorsement opportunities that Caitlin Clark has been given right out of the gate, then naturally there's going to be some resentment. It's a very human reaction. However, the problem arises when that resentment doesn't remain off the court, but instead spills over into actual gameplay. What we're witnessing is that this jealousy appears to be turning into targeting, and Clark is experiencing it at a much higher rate than any of her peers. The result is a situation that can be fairly described as a textbook hostile work environment. From a legal perspective, this is where Title VII of the Civil Rights Act comes into play. Under that law, the federal government does in fact have the authority to step in and take action if they determine her treatment is rooted in discrimination. And in this case, given the data and the public statements that have been made, there is a real argument that such intervention could be warranted. So, to clarify, what you're saying is that the federal government should step in here because Caitlin Clark's civil rights are being violated as she is being consistently targeted on the basketball court, and nobody seems to be offering her protection. Is that accurate? That's exactly correct. Now, some people will argue, this is sports, and hard fouls are simply part of the game. And to a degree, that's true. I'm a sports fan myself, and I enjoy competitive, physical play. But at some point, we have to separate the spirit of the game from the actual facts. When you look at the statistical disparity, the amount of punishment Clark is absorbing compared not only to her peers in the WNBA but also to top stars in other professional leagues, the numbers are staggering. There's simply no comparison. And this goes beyond just tough basketball, it creates what can be described as a hostile work environment. What makes this situation even more concerning is that it appears to involve a protected class, specifically race, as evidenced by comments made directly by players within the league. That racial component opens the door for the federal government to get involved. And we know this wouldn't be unprecedented. The federal government has stepped in before when sports raised legal or civil rights concerns, whether it was MLB's steroid scandal, the NFL concussion crisis, the USA Gymnastics abuse under Dr. Larry Nassar, or even more recently, interventions within the NCAA on issues involving fencing, swimming, and gymnastics. These precedents show that government action in sports is far from unusual. Now, this may be the first time we've seen racial tensions escalate to this level in the WNBA. But it does beg the question, why don't referees step in and protect her more? That's an important point, and here's the issue. The 17% figure, that massive share of flagrant fouls Clark has absorbed, only accounts for fouls that referees actually called. The bigger problem is the number of fouls that simply go uncalled. As former player and analyst Rebecca Lobo has noted, the missed calls are staggering. If someone were to actually audit the tape from her rookie season, it's likely the disparity would be much higher than the already alarming 17%. Has any player openly said they don't want to see a white woman dominating the WNBA? Not in those exact words. But you do have A'ja Wilson's quote, her insistence that it absolutely has to do with race. Along with other questionable comments, these public statements point toward a troubling pattern where race seems to be a consistent undercurrent. Now, does this rise to the level of a guaranteed Title VII court case? Maybe not immediately. But what is undeniable is that the situation demands investigation. After all, we have video evidence, clear proof of Clark being roughed up, of referees looking the other way, and of the players involved. that is compelling evidence on its own. And as history has shown, when investigations dig deeper, into communications, into emails, into behind-the-scenes discussions, often even more damning facts come to light that confirm the seriousness of the issue. The point is simple: where there's smoke, there's usually fire. And with so many red flags already visible, this is something that absolutely deserves scrutiny. Somebody needs to ask the hard questions about why this situation is allowed to continue unchecked. And until that happens, the integrity of the league, and Caitlin Clark's future, will remain at risk. Sean, thank you very much. I really appreciate your time and insight.